The bed was cold at 3 a.m. I didn't need to reach over to know. After 12 years together, 10 of them married, you develop a sense for these things. The absence of another body creates its own kind of presence. A vacuum. A silence that hums. I lay there for a full minute, staring at the ceiling fan making its lazy rotations in the dark. My mind was doing what it always does. Cataloging, analyzing, filing information into mental folders labeled with threat levels and probability assessments. Fact, it was 3:07 a.m. Fact, my wife was not beside me. Fact, the sheets on her side were cold, meaning she'd been gone for some time. Probability of innocent explanation, to be determined. Then I checked my phone. No messages, no missed calls. I pulled up her contact and hit dial. Voicemail. First ring. That meant her phone was off. Natalie never turned her phone off. In 12 years, I'd seen her silence it, ignore it, leave it in another room, but never turn it off entirely. Her phone was an extension of her arm, a digital lifeline to her job, her friends, her carefully maintained network of obligations and social connections. I sent a text. You okay? The little delivered notification sat there, unchanged. No read receipt, no typing bubbles, nothing. I got up, walked to the window, and looked out at the driveway. Her white Lexus was gone. Now, here's something you need to understand about me. My name is Grant Lawson. I'm 38 years old. I spent 9 years in Army intelligence before transitioning to civilian life and building a cybersecurity consulting firm that now employs 42 people. I've sat in rooms with men who wanted to kill me. I've analyzed threat patterns in places where getting it wrong meant body bags. In those 9 years, I learned something valuable. The difference between civilians and professionals isn't training or experience or equipment. It's emotional control. Civilians react, professionals respond. Civilians assume, professionals verify. I don't panic. I don't assume. I observe, document, and plan. So when my wife's car was missing at 3 a.m. on a Tuesday with no explanation, I didn't storm around the house or call her 17 times. I didn't check her email or search through her belongings or do any of the other things a panicking husband might do. I made coffee, I sat in the kitchen, and I waited. She came home at 5:14 a.m. I heard her key in the lock, heard her trying to be quiet, heard the soft pat of her feet in the hallway. She didn't expect the kitchen light to be on. When she rounded the corner and saw me sitting at the island with my coffee mug, she stopped dead. You're awake? Her voice pitched up slightly at the end. Micro-expression of surprise mixed with something else. Something I'd catalog later. Couldn't sleep? I said. Where were you? I couldn't sleep either. Went for a drive. Clear my head. She was already moving toward the refrigerator, creating activity to avoid eye contact. Work stuff. The Henderson account is killing me. At 3 a.m.? You know how I get when I'm stressed. I did know. That's what made this interesting. When Natalie was stressed, she took baths. She drank wine. She binged reality TV shows she'd never admit to watching. She did not go for drives in the middle of the night. I watched her grab a water bottle. Her hair was slightly damp at the ends. I glanced out the window at the clear sky. No rain. Hadn't rained in 4 days. And there was something else. A smell. Not her usual lavender shampoo and the subtle perfume she'd worn for years. Something industrial. Antiseptic. Like the soap in public restrooms. You should get some sleep, she said, kissing my cheek as she passed. Her lips were cool. Big day tomorrow. Yeah, I said. Big day. I listened to her footsteps on the stairs. Heard our bedroom door close. Then I opened the notes app on my phone and typed, Tuesday, 5:14 a.m. Gone approximately 2+ hours. Hair damp, no rain. Industrial soap smell. Henderson account excuse. Verify. I didn't say anything the next day. or the day after. I've seen men blow operations because they couldn't control their emotions. They got angry. They confronted. They tipped their hand before they understood what they were holding. That's amateur hour. That's how you lose. Instead, I went to work. I came home. I had dinner with my wife. I asked about her day. I told her about mine. I was the same Grant I'd always been. Steady, reliable, maybe a little boring. Wednesday night, I went to bed at 10:30, same as always. Natalie stayed up to finish some emails. I heard her come to bed around midnight. I controlled my breathing, kept my eyes closed. At 2:47 a.m., I felt the mattress shift. I listened to her dress in the dark. Soft sounds of fabric. The careful zip of jeans. She'd gotten good at this. No stumbling, no fumbling for clothes. This wasn't her first time. The bedroom door opened and closed with barely a whisper. I waited 3 minutes. Then I was up, dressed, and heading for the garage. My black F-150 started quietly. I kept the headlights off as I backed out, using only the backup camera's glow. She was already a quarter-mile down the road, her taillights small red dots in the darkness. I followed. 43 minutes later, we were on the outskirts of the city, in an industrial zone I'd driven past maybe twice in my life. Old factories, empty lots. The kind of place that thrived in the 1980s and died in the 2000s. Natalie pulled into a cracked parking lot beside a massive building. Brick, broken windows on the upper floors, a faded sign that read, Piedmont Textile Corp. The place had been shuttered since 2019. She got out of her car, walked to a side door, punched in a code on a keypad that looked surprisingly new compared to the building. The door opened. She went in. I parked 200 yards away behind a rusted dumpster and killed the engine. 2 hours and 14 minutes later, at 5:01 a.m., the side door opened. Natalie emerged. Alone. I watched her get in her car, watched her drive away. I didn't follow. Not yet. Instead, I walked to the building. The keypad was a commercial-grade Schlage. The kind you'd put on a building you actually used. I pulled out my phone and photographed it, the door, the building facade, and Natalie's tire tracks in the gravel. Then I photographed the property address. 4415 Industrial Parkway. The next 4 days were about intelligence gathering. I maintained complete normalcy at home. Made breakfast Saturday morning. Took Natalie to dinner Saturday night. Watched a movie with her Sunday afternoon, some romantic comedy she picked. I laughed at the right moments. Held her hand. Meanwhile, I was dissecting her life. First, the building. A property records search revealed 4415 Industrial Parkway was owned by something called Coastal Holdings LLC. Registered in Delaware, the go-to state for shell companies. Listed agent, a law firm in Wilmington that specialized in corporate anonymity. But shell companies have cracks. They file taxes. They have bank accounts. They leave trails. It took me 2 days to trace Coastal Holdings back to its beneficial owner. The name hit me like a punch to the throat. Victor Ashford. I knew Victor. Everyone in this city knew Victor. 52 years old, silver-templed. Magazine handsome in that wealthy older man way. He was the city's most prominent real estate developer, responsible for half the luxury condos and mixed-use developments that had transformed the downtown skyline. He sat on the city council. His wife, Patricia, came from old money. Her family had owned tobacco plantations 2 centuries ago, and while the tobacco was long gone, the money had evolved and multiplied. Victor and I had met 3 times at charity events. Galas. Fundraisers. The kind of events where people write 5-figure checks and congratulate each other on their generosity. Every time Natalie had introduced us, I sat at my desk in my home office, staring at Victor Ashford's photo on my screen. Distinguished, confident, The kind of man who'd never been told no in his life. Then I started on Natalie's digital footprint. Here's the thing about living with someone for over a decade. You know their patterns. You know their tells. Natalie had used the same password structure since I'd met her. First pet's name, birth year, special character. She'd cycled through variations, but the pattern held. Her main cloud account took me 4 attempts. I found the photos on her second backup drive. The first one was dated 18 months ago. Natalie and Victor at what looked like a restaurant patio, some upscale place with white tablecloths and wine glasses. His arm around her head tilted toward him. The easy intimacy of people who'd already crossed every line. There were 47 more photos spanning the past year and a half. Hotels, I recognized the Ritz-Carlton in D.C., the Salamander Resort in Middleburg, a beach house on the Outer Banks, private dinners, weekend getaways. The back seat of what I recognized as Victor's Range Rover. Nothing explicit, but she was curled against him like they'd been together for years. Never anything sexual, Natalie was too careful for that, but explicit enough in what they implied. The way her body curved into his, the way his hand rested on her thigh, the way they looked at each other like there was no one else in the world. 18 months. I sat there in my home office, the glow of the monitor painting my face blue in the darkness, and I looked at those 47 photographs one by one. I tried to remember what I'd been doing 18 months ago, working on a contract with a defense subcontractor, traveling to meetings in Northern Virginia, coming home exhausted at 8 p.m., eating whatever dinner Natalie had prepared, falling asleep in front of the television, being a husband, being a partner, being a fool. This wasn't an affair. This wasn't a mistake or a moment of weakness or any of the other euphemisms people use to excuse betrayal. This was a parallel relationship running alongside our marriage like a secret river. For 18 months, she'd been living 2 lives, one with me, one with him, and I'd never suspected. Or maybe I had suspected. Maybe there had been signs I'd chosen to ignore. Late nights at work that seemed to multiply. Weekend conferences that had become more frequent. A distance in her eyes that I'd attributed to stress or exhaustion or simply the natural drift that happens in long marriages. I'd been so focused on building my company that I'd missed the obvious. The enemy wasn't outside the wire. The enemy was in my bed. I spent 20 minutes looking at those photos. Then I downloaded them to an encrypted drive and erased any trace of my access. Week 2, I went deeper. Our finances had always been semi-combined. A joint account for household expenses, separate accounts for personal spending. I'd never monitored Natalie's personal account. I trusted her. Trust is a fascinating thing. It's the foundation of everything, and the first thing people exploit. I accessed our joint account records first. Nothing unusual. But when I cross-referenced her stated income with our tax returns, the numbers didn't match. Natalie worked as a marketing director for Veracor Medical Devices. She told me she made $94,000 a year, that her raises had been modest due to company performance. According to our tax filings, she'd made $118,000 last year, and $127,000 the year before. She'd been lying about her income for at least 2 years. The difference, roughly $30,000 annually, had to be going somewhere. It took me another day to find it. A savings account at a bank we didn't use, in her name only. Balance, $47,342. She'd been siphoning money, small amounts. $500 here, $800 there. The kind of withdrawals that don't trigger alerts. Patient. Methodical. Like she was building something. The final piece came from her email drafts. Another password variation, another successful guess. The unsent message was addressed to someone named Jennifer Pace. A quick search confirmed Jennifer Pace was a divorce attorney. Not just any divorce attorney, She specialized in high-asset dissolutions, aggressive, ruthless, known for maximizing spousal claims. The draft was dated 3 months ago. Jennifer, following up on our consultation. I'm ready to proceed with the timeline we discussed. Target filing date approximately 6 months from now, after his company acquisition closes. I'll have all documentation ready. As discussed, the goal is to establish grounds for equitable distribution of business assets acquired during marriage. Please confirm next steps. I read it 3 times. 6 months from now would be after our 10th anniversary. After the acquisition deal I'd been working on for 2 years, a deal worth $4.2 million. My wife wasn't just cheating on me. She was waiting, positioning, planning to divorce me at the exact moment that would maximize her take. She was going to eat me alive and walk away fat. I closed the laptop, poured myself 3 fingers of bourbon, drank it slow. Then I started planning. Dennis Whitmore's office was on the 14th floor of a glass tower downtown. He was 63 years old, built like a bulldog, and had a reputation that preceded him like a thunderclap. In legal circles, they called him the surgeon, not because he was delicate, but because he removed problems with clinical precision. His secretary led me through a reception area decorated with framed articles about his most notable victories. The headlines were telling, "Developer loses everything in bitter divorce." CEO's ex-wife awarded record settlement. The attorney who never loses. "Grant Lawson," he said, shaking my hand. His grip was firm and brief. "I've heard good things about your company. Cybersecurity, right?" "That's right." "Smart field. Everyone's got secrets they need protecting." He gestured to a leather chair. "Sit. Tell me why you're here." I sat. I told him. Everything. The 3 a.m. absences, the warehouse, the photos, the hidden money, the draft email to Jennifer Pace. When I finished, Dennis leaned back in his chair and steepled his fingers. "How long have you known?" 3 weeks. "And you haven't confronted her?" "No." "Good. Most men would have blown up by now, screamed, thrown things, given her time to destroy evidence and lawyer up." He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "You're not most men. I need to know my options." "Virginia's an at-fault state," Dennis said. "That's your first advantage. Adultery is grounds for divorce, and more importantly, it affects the financial settlement. A court can, and often does, award the injured spouse a larger share of marital assets. It can also bar the adulterous spouse from spousal support entirely. So if I can prove the affair, you already have photos, documented absences, financial irregularities suggesting she's been planning this." He nodded slowly. "But there's a complication." "Victor Ashford." "Victor Ashford," Dennis tapped his desk. "He's connected, council seat, business relationships with half the judges in this county. If you go after him publicly, and your wife's affair becomes a matter of public record, expect him to push back. Hard. Define hard. Could be anything. Business pressure, calls to your clients, suggestions that they might want to reconsider their relationship with your firm. Reputation attacks, stories planted with friendly journalists about your mental state, your business practices, your character. He's got media contacts who could make your life unpleasant." Dennis shrugged. "Or he could settle. Pay you to go away quietly. Men like Victor prefer their scandals buried." "What if I don't want to go away quietly?" Dennis raised an eyebrow. "Then you better be prepared for a war, because that's what it'll be." I thought about this. What's the cleanest path? Document everything. File first. File with evidence. Don't give her or her attorney any room to maneuver. Dennis leaned forward. "Your company acquisition. How far along is it?" "Due diligence is complete. We're expecting to close in 8 weeks. Can you accelerate that?" Possibly. Do it, and restructure your ownership stake before filing. Assets acquired before marriage are protected, and business holdings solely in your name stay yours, but only if the paperwork is clean. He pulled out a legal pad and started writing. I'll need everything you have, every photo, every document, every timestamp. I reached into my bag and pulled out the encrypted drive. It's all here. Dennis took it, weighed it in his hand. You came prepared. I like that. I'm not interested in being unprepared. One more question. He looked at me with something that might have been respect. What's the goal here? Just the divorce? Or do you want to burn it all down? I held his gaze. I want her to leave this marriage with exactly what she brought into it. Which was nothing. Dennis smiled. This time it reached his eyes. I think we're going to get along just fine, Mr. Lawson. The meeting with Patricia Ashford happened the following week. It was a risk. I knew that. But intelligence work taught me something valuable. The enemy of your enemy isn't always your friend, but sometimes they're useful. I'd found Patricia's email through a charity board they both served on. My message was carefully worded. Mrs. Ashford, I believe we have a mutual interest in discussing your husband's recent activities. I'm not a journalist. I'm someone in a similar situation to yours. Coffee sometime? She responded within an hour. We met at a cafe in Fredericksburg, far enough from the city that we wouldn't be recognized. She was already seated when I arrived, mid-50s, elegantly dressed, the kind of beauty that expensive maintenance preserves but can't quite stop time from touching. Mr. Lawson, she didn't stand. Sit down. I sat. Before you say anything, she said, stirring her tea with mechanical precision, I should tell you that I know exactly why you're here, and I know exactly who my husband has been spending time with. How long have you known? About your wife specifically? 6 months. About Victor's tendencies? She laughed softly. There was no humor in it. 23 years, since about a year after we married. And you've stayed. I've stayed. She set down her spoon. We have 3 children. The youngest is 17. And I signed a prenuptial agreement when I was 28 years old and stupid enough to think love conquered all. What does the prenup say? It says that if I file for divorce, I leave with a modest settlement. Enough to maintain appearances, not enough to maintain my life. Her jaw tightened. Victor's lawyers wrote it. My father's lawyers approved it. Nobody asked what I thought. So you're trapped. I was trapped. She looked at me directly for the first time. Then you sent me that email. I waited. Victor has a pattern, Patricia continued. He targets married women, always. They're safer, you see. Less likely to want publicity. Less likely to demand he leave me. She picked up her tea, didn't drink it. There have been at least 4 others that I know of. Probably more. What happened to them? 2 ended quietly. The women went back to their husbands or moved away, and everyone pretended it never happened. She paused. The other 2 tried to end things on their terms, make demands, threaten exposure. And one lost her job. The other lost her marriage and her job. Patricia's expression was unreadable. Victor has connections in this city. Business relationships. Favors owed. When someone becomes inconvenient, they discover that doors start closing. He destroyed their lives. He protected himself. That's what Victor does. She set down her cup. Your wife is the newest. She won't be the last. Unless someone stops the pattern. I leaned back. What do you want, Mrs. Ashford? I want out. Her voice was flat, hard. I want out with my dignity and my fair share of a fortune I helped build over 23 years. And I want Victor to feel, for once, what it's like to lose something he thought he owned. The prenup. Does it have any exceptions? 1. a thin smile. A morality clause. Infidelity voids the protective provisions. But you'd need proof. I'd need documented, undeniable proof. The kind that would hold up in court against Victor's army of lawyers. She leaned forward slightly. Do you understand what I'm saying, Mr. Lawson? I've tried this before, twice. I hired investigators, gathered evidence, consulted with attorneys. Both times Victor found out. Both times he made sure the evidence disappeared. He has people in places. People who owe him. A paralegal at one firm. A police captain who went to prep school with him. So why would this time be different? Because this time I wouldn't be doing it alone. This time, I'd have someone who has just as much to lose as I do. Someone with military training and cybersecurity expertise. She held my gaze. Someone Victor doesn't know is coming. I considered this. She was right. Alone, either of us could be neutralized. Together, we created redundancy. If Victor moved against one of us, the other could still act. What exactly are you proposing? A partnership, temporary and specific. Patricia pulled a folded paper from her purse. I've written down everything I know about Victor's patterns, his schedule, his habits, the women I'm certain about, the property on Industrial Parkway. I've known about it for years. I just couldn't prove what he was using it for. You knew about the warehouse? I knew he owned it through one of his shell companies. I knew he went there sometimes late at night. I suspected the rest. She pushed the paper across the table. Your wife isn't special, Mr. Lawson. I'm sorry to say that so bluntly, but you need to understand. She's just the newest. He's been doing this for as long as I've known him. Finding vulnerable women, making them feel seen, using them until he gets bored. I took the paper, unfolded it. 2 pages of handwritten notes, names, dates, patterns. And when he gets bored, he moves on. Usually they accept it. They go back to their lives, grateful they weren't exposed. Patricia's expression darkened. The ones who don't accept it, well, you've seen what happens to them. I understood then. I understood why she'd agreed to meet me. Why she'd been waiting for someone exactly like me to appear. You want me to help you build that case, I said. And in return, I'll help you build yours. She reached into her purse and pulled out a business card. This is my personal cell. Use it only for this. I bought it last week. No connection to any name Victor knows. You've been planning this. I've been planning this for 3 years. I just needed the right circumstances. She stood, gathering her coat. And Mr. Lawson? Yes? I've watched my husband operate for over 2 decades. I know his weaknesses. I know his patterns. I know where the bodies are buried, metaphorically speaking. She stood, gathering her coat. Together, we can take everything from both of them. Separately, we're just 2 more casualties. She left a 20 on the table and walked out without looking back. The next 6 weeks were an exercise in controlled demolition. I hired Carl Brennan 3 days after meeting Patricia. We met at a diner outside Fredericksburg. Neutral ground, cash payment, no paper trail. Carl was in his early 60s, with the kind of forgettable face that had probably served him well in the bureau. Average height, average build. Gray hair. The kind of man you'd pass on the street without a second glance. 23 years FBI, he said, sliding into the booth across from me. Financial crimes, organized crime, public corruption, retired 5 years ago when the politics got too thick. He ordered black coffee without looking at the menu. What do you need? I laid it out. My wife, Victor Ashford, the warehouse, the 18 months of betrayal. Carl listened without expression. When I finished, he pulled out a small notebook. First question. What's the goal? You want leverage for a divorce settlement? You want to hurt them? You want criminal charges? I want documentation sufficient to win an at-fault divorce proceeding in Virginia. Photographs. Video, if possible. Financial records showing concealment of assets. That's achievable, he made a note. Second question. Any reason to think they know you're onto them? No. I've maintained completely normal behavior. She has no idea. Good. That's rare. A flicker of something like respect crossed his face. Most husbands blow it within the first week. Can't help themselves. They confront, they accuse, they give everything away. I'm not most husbands. Clearly. He tapped his pen against the notebook. Third question, and this one matters. Are you prepared for what we might find? I already know she's sleeping with him. I already know she's been planning to divorce me. What else is there? Carl shrugged. Sometimes there's more. Other men. Financial fraud we didn't expect. Things that make the situation worse than we thought. He met my eyes. I've seen strong men break when the full picture emerges. I need to know you'll keep your head. I spent 9 years in military intelligence. I've seen things that would make a civilian vomit. Whatever you find, I can handle. Carl studied me for a long moment. Then he nodded. All right, here's how this works. I charge $200 an hour plus expenses. Everything I do is legal, no wiretapping, no breaking and entering, no entrapment. If it can't be used in court, I won't do it. That's what I want. I'll need a retainer, $5,000 to start. I'll send you detailed reports every week with photographs and video documentation attached. You'll have a secure login to access everything. I pulled an envelope from my jacket and slid it across the table. 5,000 in hundreds. Carl opened it, counted it without embarrassment, and tucked it into his jacket. I'll start tonight. Give me 2 weeks, and I'll have a pattern established. After that, we fill in the gaps. I don't do illegal, Carl told me as we wrapped up. Not entrapment, not breaking and entering, not anything that gets evidence thrown out. I don't need illegal. I need documented. He documented. Over the following weeks, Carl established a surveillance pattern. 14 separate visits by Natalie to the warehouse. Photographs with timestamps. Video of her entering and exiting. Video of Victor's Range Rover arriving and departing. The Richmond trip was a bonus. Natalie told me she had a conference. Carl followed her to a hotel where Victor had booked a suite under a corporate account. He photographed them entering together Friday evening. Photographed them at breakfast Saturday morning. Photographed them checking out Sunday afternoon. Business conference, Carl noted dryly. Interesting curriculum. Meanwhile, I was working the financial angle. Every transaction Natalie had made to her hidden account. Every lie about her salary. Every piece of evidence that she'd been preparing for a divorce while pretending everything was fine. And I discovered something else. In her email, buried in a folder she probably thought I'd never access, I found correspondence with Victor. Not romantic, strategic. He'd been advising her, recommending attorneys, suggesting timing. There was a document attached to one email, a draft separation agreement she'd been preparing. It outlined her demands. 50% of my business assets, spousal support, the house. Another email discussed how to establish abandonment grounds if I didn't give her what she wanted. The phrase that stuck with me, we need to create a trigger incident, something that makes him react badly. Then I file immediately and claim hostile environment. They were going to bait me, stage a fight, get me to lose my temper so they could paint me as the villain. They'd thought of everything. Except me thinking first. Dennis accelerated the business restructuring. The acquisition was moved up by 3 weeks. Favors called in, paperwork rushed. When it closed, the $4.2 million payout went into accounts and trusts that Natalie had no claim to. Cleanest separation I've seen, Dennis said. She can argue all she wants. Your business holdings are protected. What about the hidden money? That's actually useful to us. She diverted marital funds without your knowledge or consent. That's marital fraud. A judge won't look kindly on it. He shuffled papers. We're ready. When do you want to file? Friday. Any particular reason? Patricia's filing the same day. Dennis raised an eyebrow. Coordinated assault. I like it. Patricia's contribution was surgical. She'd gathered her own evidence over the years: credit card receipts, calendar entries, photographs from private investigators she'd hired and then dismissed when she realized she couldn't use what they found. All of it useless under the old calculation. But combined with Carl's work, combined with timestamps and video and hotel records, it was a wall of evidence so high Victor couldn't climb over it. The morality clause is triggered, her attorney told her. I know because she called me that evening, and I could hear the satisfaction in her voice like honey. 23 years of documentation. It's undeniable. He'll fight. Let him fight. Let him spend $1 million fighting. Every dollar he spends is a dollar less I need to split. Friday morning, I sat in Dennis's office and signed the filing documents. Friday afternoon, Patricia sat in her attorney's office and signed hers. By Friday evening, Victor Ashford's carefully constructed world had 2 cracks running through it. I also made a phone call that day. Anonymous tip to the board of directors at VeraCore Medical Devices, the company where Natalie worked, the company where Victor sat on the board. I believe there may be a conflict of interest, I said, using a burner phone and a voice modulator I'd picked up for $60 online. You might want to examine the relationship between board member Victor Ashford and your marketing director, Natalie Lawson. I hung up before they could ask questions. By Monday, Natalie was placed on administrative leave pending investigation. By Wednesday, Victor had resigned from the board, citing personal reasons. By Friday, Patricia's divorce filing was public record, and 3 local journalists had received anonymous packets containing carefully selected documentation of Victor Ashford's pattern of behavior. The narrative I crafted wasn't "jilted husband seeks revenge." That's a story that makes the husband look pathetic and the wife sympathetic. The narrative was, prominent developer and city council member uses position to pursue affairs with married women, then destroys careers of those who resist. 2 other women Patricia had identified from Victor's past, came forward within a week. Their stories corroborated the pattern. Their names were initially withheld, then one went public, then the other. Victor's carefully maintained image didn't crack, it shattered. Saturday night, I waited in the kitchen. Same spot where I'd waited that first night, 3 months ago. Same cold coffee mug, same steady heartbeat. Natalie came home at 11 p.m. She looked hollowed out, dark circles under her eyes. The confidence she'd always carried was gone. She walked into the kitchen and stopped when she saw me. Grant. Her voice cracked. I've been trying to call you all day. I know. My job. They put me on leave. They're saying there's an investigation, something about a conflict of interest. I know. She stared at me. Something shifted in her expression. What do you mean, you know? I set down my coffee mug. I know about Victor. I know about the warehouse on Industrial Parkway. I know about the keypad code you punch in at 2:47 in the morning while you think I'm sleeping. Her face went pale. I know about the $47,000 you've been hiding in an account at First National. I know about the emails with Jennifer Pace. I know about the draft separation agreement where you plan to take half my business and establish abandonment grounds by staging a fight. Grant, I know about Richmond, the hotel suite Victor booked, the Saturday breakfast at the cafe on Gray Street. You had eggs. Benedict, he had the smoked salmon. I have photographs. She sank into a chair. Her hands were shaking. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. The refrigerator hummed. Somewhere outside, a dog barked. How long? She finally whispered. How long have you known? Since the second night. Her head snapped up. The second? That was months ago. You've known for months? 87 days. I took a sip of my cold coffee. But I wanted to be thorough. Thorough. She repeated the word like it was foreign. You've been… what? Spying on me? Following me? For 3 months? I preferred documenting, and I hired a professional for most of it. Carl Brennan, former FBI. Very thorough. The color drained from her face. You hired a private investigator? I needed evidence that would hold up in court. Not speculation, not suspicion, proof. I set down the mug. I have 14 separate documented visits to the warehouse. Video footage, time-stamped photographs, hotel records, financial transfers, communications with your attorney. My attorney, Jennifer Pace. You've been consulting with her for 6 months, planning to file after my acquisition closed so you could claim half the payout. I watched her reaction carefully. The draft email was very detailed. I particularly appreciated the part about creating a trigger incident to establish abandonment grounds. For a moment, I thought she might deny it. Fall back on old habits, tears, deflection, manufactured outrage. But something in her expression shifted. The mask she'd been wearing for 18 months finally cracked. You read my emails. You used the same password pattern you've used for 12 years. Riley, your first dog, your birth year, exclamation point. I shrugged. You should have changed it. This is… She pressed her palms against her eyes. This is insane. You've been building a case against me like I'm some kind of criminal. No, I've been building a case against you like you're someone who is planning to destroy my life while pretending to love me. I stood up and she flinched. There's a difference. Grant, please, let me explain. I've already filed, I said. At fault. Adultery. My attorney has submitted documentation to the court. Photographs, video, financial records, communications, everything. You can't. I can. I did. I kept my voice level. Steady. The same voice I'd used in briefing rooms when everything was going sideways. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to sign the settlement my attorney has prepared. You're going to walk away from this marriage with what you brought into it. Your clothes. Your car. That's it. Grant, please, let me explain. There's nothing to explain. I stood up. For 10 years, I gave you everything I had. I worked 60-hour weeks to build something. I trusted you with my life, my future, my plans. And you spent 18 months lying to my face while you planned to destroy me. While you slept with a man who treats women like disposable assets. It wasn't like that. Tears were streaming down her face now. Grant, you don't understand. Our marriage, we'd grown apart. You were always working, always focused on the business. I felt invisible. And then Victor told you what you wanted to hear. I walked to the window, looked out at the empty driveway. That's what men like him do. They find the crack in someone's armor and they exploit it. He said he loved me. He says that to all of them. I turned back to face her. You're not the first, Natalie. There were others before you. At least 4 that Patricia knows about. Probably more. Patricia? Her eyes widened. You've been talking to Patricia Ashford? We have mutual interests. Natalie stood up, her hands gripping the back of the chair. Grant, listen to me. Patricia she's not what she seems. She's manipulating you. This is what she does. She finds Victor's women and she files for divorce. Tomorrow morning. Same time as me. I checked my watch. Actually, she probably already has. She was meeting with her attorney at 8. No. Natalie's face twisted. No. If Patricia files with proof, if she gets out of the prenup, Victor will lose everything. His business, his reputation, His political career? That's the idea. You don't understand. She crossed the kitchen and grabbed my arm. Victor has connections. If you expose him publicly, if this becomes a scandal, he'll retaliate. He has friends, powerful friends. He'll come after your business, your reputation. He already has, I said, gently removing her hand. He made some calls last week, tried to pressure my business partners. One of them called me, actually. Said he'd gotten a very strange call from someone suggesting that Lawson Cybersecurity might be involved in some questionable practices. The caller said it might be worth reconsidering their relationship with us. Natalie went pale. What did you do? I explained the situation, showed them the documentation. They were very understanding. I smiled. It felt strange on my face, like wearing a mask. Turns out, people don't like being threatened on behalf of a man who cheats on his wife and tries to destroy anyone who gets in his way. And the other calls? Victor left me a voicemail. Very polished. Very reasonable. Suggested we handle this like gentlemen and come to an arrangement that benefits everyone. You should take that offer. Natalie's voice was urgent now. Grant, please, you don't know what he's capable of. If you push him into a corner, he recorded himself threatening me. In a one-party consent state. I opened the door. His political career is over. His business is crumbling. His wife is going to take him for everything she can get. And by this time next week, every news outlet in the region will know exactly what kind of man Victor Ashford really is. And me? Her voice cracked. What happens to me? I looked back at her one more time. At the woman I'd loved for 12 years. The woman I'd planned to grow old with. The woman who'd been sneaking out at 2:47 a.m. for 18 months while I slept. My attorney will be in touch. Sign the papers, Natalie. There's nothing left to fight for. I closed the door behind me. The fallout was spectacular. Victor withdrew from the city council within 2 weeks. His announcement cited family matters and the need to focus on personal healing. The journalists who'd received the documentation packets didn't buy it for a second. The first story ran on a Tuesday morning, a carefully researched piece in the local business journal that detailed Victor's pattern of pursuing relationships with married women in his professional orbit. 3 days later, one of the women from his past went public with her name and her story. By the end of the week, the second woman had followed. The pattern was undeniable. Victor didn't just have affairs. He selected targets deliberately, cultivated relationships over months, and then discarded them when convenient. When they resisted or threatened to go public, he used his connections to make problems disappear. Careers ended, marriages collapsed, and Victor always emerged unscathed. Until now. The stories ran for 3 weeks. Victor's pattern of behavior, the women who'd come forward, Patricia's divorce filing, the business connections that had protected him for years, all of them suddenly scrambling to distance themselves. I watched it unfold with a detachment that surprised me. I'd expected to feel satisfaction, the vindication of seeing an enemy destroyed. Instead, I felt nothing. Victor Ashford was a problem that had been solved. That was all. 3 major development projects stalled pending investor review. The bank that had backed his biggest deal, a mixed-use development downtown that would have been his crowning achievement, quietly withdrew their support. His company restructured under new leadership, with Victor reduced to a minority shareholder in his own empire. The city council released a statement expressing deep concern about the allegations and commending the women who'd come forward. Several of Victor's former allies issued carefully worded denunciations. The photograph opportunities dried up. The invitations stopped coming. Patricia's divorce proceeded exactly as planned. The morality clause voided the prenup. Her attorney argued, successfully, that 23 years of partnership entitled her to an equitable share. She received the family home, $3.8 million in assets, and full custody of their youngest. Victor moved out of state 3 months later. Last I heard, he was in Florida, trying to rebuild with the remains of his fortune. His political ambitions were dead. His reputation was ash. And Natalie? Natalie signed the settlement. She didn't have a choice, really. Her attorney, Jennifer Pace, the one she'd been secretly consulting, took one look at the evidence and advised her to settle immediately. "You have no leverage," I imagine Jennifer told her. "The documentation is overwhelming. You'll lose in court, and you'll lose badly." The $47,000 she'd hidden was ordered returned to the marital estate, minus legal fees. The house went to me. The investment accounts, the retirement funds, everything we'd built together, divided according to what was actually mine to begin with, which was almost all of it. She walked away with her clothes, her car, and the knowledge that she'd gambled everything on Victor Ashford and lost. A week after the settlement was signed, she tried one last play. She came to my office, past security, past my assistant, appearing in my doorway like a ghost from another life. Grant. She was wearing a dress I didn't recognize. New makeup. The careful presentation of someone trying to reconstruct a facade. "Can we talk?" I closed my laptop. "You're not supposed to be here." "I know, She sat down without being invited, crossing her legs, trying to project a calm she clearly didn't feel. "I wanted to apologize. Properly. Not through lawyers." "Okay." "Victor. He manipulated me. I see that now. He made me feel like our marriage was broken, like I deserved something more, like you were the problem." She leaned forward. "But I was wrong. I was so wrong, Grant. And if you'd just give me a chance." "No. Please." The composure cracked. Tears appeared, theatrical and rehearsed. "I made a mistake. One mistake. After 10 years, 18 months. That's how long it lasted. 14 visits to the warehouse that we documented, probably dozens more we didn't. Thousands of texts. Hundreds of emails." I kept my voice flat. "That's not a mistake, Natalie. That's a campaign. I can change. We can go to counseling. You hired a divorce attorney. You were siphoning money into a secret account. You drafted a plan to file for divorce the moment it would hurt me most." I stood up. "You didn't make a mistake. You made a choice. Every single day for 18 months, you made the same choice." I was confused. Victor's gone. Victor lost his marriage, his business, his reputation. He's living in Florida now, trying to figure out what went wrong. I walked to the door and opened it. "You don't get to blame him anymore. He's not here." Natalie stood up slowly. The rehearsed performance had collapsed. What was left was something raw. Anger, maybe. Desperation. "You destroyed my life." "No," I met her eyes. "You destroyed your life. I just documented it." She walked past me without another word. I watched her disappear down the hallway, watched the elevator doors close behind her. Then I went back to work. The last time I saw her was at the final hearing. She looked 10 years older. The polished professional I'd married had been replaced by someone hollowed out, diminished. She tried to catch my eye as we left the courtroom. I walked past her without stopping. 14 months later, I was sitting on the porch of a house I'd bought on the coast. The acquisition had closed. The money was invested. I'd started a foundation that helped veterans transition to civilian careers, something I'd thought about doing for years but never had the time for. And I'd met someone. Elaine Harper. She was a trauma nurse at the VA hospital where I did volunteer work. She had dark hair and calm eyes and a laugh that came easily. She didn't ask questions she didn't need answers to. She trusted people until they gave her reasons not to. We'd been dating for 4 months. It was new, careful. Neither of us was in a hurry. I was watching the ocean when she came out with 2 cups of coffee. "Mail came," she said, handing me an envelope along with the mug. "Looks personal." I looked at the return address. Patricia Ashford. I opened it while Elaine settled into the chair beside me. Dear Grant, I wanted to write and thank you. Not for helping me escape Victor, though you did, but for something else. For 23 years, I accepted less than I deserved. I stayed in a marriage that diminished me because I believed the alternative was worse. I told myself stories about duty and children and the impossibility of starting over. You showed me those stories were lies. I've remarried. His name is David. He's a high school history teacher. He has no interest in power or status or the games Victor played. He just wanted me, the real me, not the trophy wife I'd become. I don't know if I believe in fresh starts anymore. I think we carry our pasts with us, no matter how far we run. But I believe in choosing differently, in recognizing when the life we've built isn't the life we want. Thank you for making me see that I was worth more than what I had accepted. I hope you found the same. With gratitude. Patricia. I read the letter twice. Then I folded it and slipped it back into the envelope. Elaine was watching the waves, giving me space. She was good at that, knowing when to engage and when to let silence do the work. Good news? She asked eventually. Old news, I said. From another life. She nodded. Didn't push. I put the letter in my pocket. I'd file it later, in the drawer where I kept the things worth remembering and the things worth letting go. Then I picked up my coffee, settled back in my chair, and watched the waves roll in. The sun was warm. The air tasted like salt. Some wounds don't heal, but some people choose to stop bleeding. Natalie called twice in the months that followed. I never answered. She left voicemails, the first apologetic, the second angry, demanding to know how I could have done this to her. I deleted them both. Last I heard, she was working at a mid-sized marketing firm in another city. Entry level. Starting over at 36. I didn't feel satisfaction hearing that. I didn't feel vindication or triumph or any of the things I'd expected to feel. I just felt done. The week after the divorce finalized, I'd driven past the warehouse one last time. The building was still there. Brick walls, broken windows, faded sign. A real estate developer had bought it from Victor's company during the fire sale. Plans were to convert it into loft apartments. I parked in the same lot where I'd parked that second night. Got out. Walked up to the side door with its commercial keypad. Someone had changed the code. The red light blinked at me, denying access. I stood there for a while, looking at a building that meant nothing and everything. A shell of brick and memory. The place where my marriage had died months before, I realized it was already dead. Then I got back in my truck and drove away. I never went back. Here's what people don't tell you about betrayal. The anticipation is worse than the act. Once I knew, once I had proof and documentation and the cold certainty of photographs, the anger became something I could use. Fuel for a fire that burned clean and hot. But those first nights, the weeks before I started investigating, when I only had suspicions and the cold side of a bed, that was the hardest part. The not knowing. The wondering if I was crazy, paranoid, inventing problems where none existed. I used to lie awake and rehearse the conversation where Natalie would explain everything and it would all make sense. A sick family member, a crisis at work, something that would let me keep the life I thought I had. Those fantasies died in a parking lot on Industrial Parkway at 3 a.m., watching my wife enter a building owned by a man who'd been sleeping with her for 18 months. After that, everything was just execution. 6 months after the divorce, I got a call from Dennis Whitmore. Thought you'd want to know, he said. Victor Ashford tried to sue Patricia for defamation, claims her public statements damaged his business interests. And? Judge threw it out, said truth was an absolute defense and Patricia had documentation to spare. Dennis's voice held a note of satisfaction. He also ordered Victor to pay her legal fees, Apparently, the judge has a daughter who got involved with a married man once. Didn't go well. I laughed. It was the first genuine laugh I'd had in months. How's Patricia doing? Remarried, living in Charlottesville? Seems happy from what I hear. Dennis paused. How about you? I looked out the window of my office. The foundation had grown. We'd helped 63 veterans find jobs in the past year. I was dating a woman who made me remember why I'd wanted a partner in the first place. My company was thriving. My life was my own. I'm good, I said. Actually good. Glad to hear it. Dennis cleared his throat. Listen, I've been doing this job for 31 years. Seen a lot of divorces, a lot of betrayals. Most people come out the other side diminished, even the ones who win. What's your point? You didn't just survive this. You came out ahead. That's rare. He paused. Don't waste it. I don't intend to. We said our goodbyes and hung up. I went back to work. 2 years later, almost to the day, I proposed to Elaine. We were on the porch of the coastal house, the same porch where I'd read Patricia's letter. The sun was setting, painting the water in shades of orange and pink. I didn't do anything fancy, no elaborate speeches, no grand gestures. I just asked her if she wanted to build a life together, a real one, honest and imperfect and based on something that could actually last. She said yes. We got married 3 months later. Small ceremony. Just family and close friends. No galas. No charity events. No pretending to be something we weren't. Natalie wasn't there, obviously, but Patricia sent a card. Congratulations on choosing differently. It's the hardest thing and the best thing. With love, P. I kept the card. Some things are worth remembering. I think about that first night sometimes. The cold bed, the missing car, the careful lie about going for a drive. I think about what would have happened if I'd confronted her then. If I'd done what most people do, gotten angry, demanded answers, given her time to prepare, I think she would have denied it. I think she would have cried and apologized and promised to do better. I think I might have believed her, because I wanted to, because it was easier, because the alternative meant admitting that the life I'd built was built on sand. And then, 6 months later, I would have come home to empty rooms and a process server with divorce papers. She would have taken half my business. She would have painted me as the neglectful husband, too focused on work to notice his wife's needs. She would have won. Instead, I kept my mouth shut. I watched. I documented. I planned. And when the moment came, I didn't hesitate. Some people will tell you that's cold, that a loving husband would have fought for his marriage, given her a chance to explain, worked through it with counselors and compromise. Those people have never watched their wife sneak out at 2:47 a.m. to meet a man who's been advising her on how to destroy you. Trust isn't something you rebuild after that. It's something you bury. Last thing. About a year after everything settled, I was cleaning out my home office and found the encrypted drive. The one with all the evidence, the photos, the financial records, the surveillance reports. I held it in my hand for a long time. Everything was on there. 18 months of betrayal, compressed into gigabytes of data. The entire story of how my marriage ended. I could have kept it. Proof. Documentation. Something to look at when I doubted myself, when I wondered if I'd done the right thing. Instead, I walked outside, dropped the drive into the fire pit, and watched it melt. The plastic bubbled. The metal warped. 20 minutes later, it was just slag. I went back inside, poured myself a drink, and sat in the quiet. The past is useful until it isn't. Then it's just weight. I was done carrying it. Elaine came in around midnight. She'd been on a late shift. Trauma never respects business hours. "You're still up," she said, dropping her bag by the door. "Couldn't sleep." She walked over, kissed the top of my head, started making tea. Routine. Comfortable. The kind of easy intimacy that doesn't need to perform. Bad day? She asked. Just thinking. About? I considered telling her. About the drive. About what it represented. About the 18 months I'd spent building a case against a woman I'd once loved. Instead, I said, about how lucky I am. She smiled. It was tired, but real. That's a good thing to think about. She brought her tea to the couch, curled up beside me. We sat in comfortable silence, watching the darkness beyond the windows. Some stories don't have morals. They just have endings. This is mine.